Delilah adjusted the strap of her dress and took one last look in the mirror. The soft fabric hugged her figure in a way that felt modest yet presentable. The subtle maroon color, the only one she allowed herself to splurge on after weeks of discounts and hesitation, made her skin look less tired than she felt. Tonight wasn't about her, after all. It was about Betrayal. Subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Let's enjoy this story together. The event hall sparkled like something out of a luxury magazine. Soft jazz music drifted through the air, mingling with laughter, glasses clinking, and the gentle hum of polite conversation. A chandelier the size of a small car hung above the crowd, showering light on the dozens of guests packed into the lavish space. This was no ordinary birthday. This was Betrayal Foster's 35th, and in true Betrayal fashion, it was more gala than gathering. Delilah stood near the entrance, holding her 5-year-old son Micah's small hand, his little bow tie already crooked from fidgeting. He looked up at her with sleepy eyes, and she gently smoothed his hair. "You okay, buddy?" she whispered. Micah nodded, leaning into her side. He'd had a long day. Most days were long now. The medication made him tired. The appointments drained him. The diagnosis had left their lives cracked in half. Micah had a congenital heart defect. Something rare. Something terrifying. And something that demanded a 6-figure surgery within the next few months if he had any chance of seeing his 6th birthday. Delilah's smile stayed on her lips as guests walked past. But inside, she felt like she was holding back a landslide. Every dollar she'd earned, every hour she'd worked, every sleepless night she'd pushed through, it all went to saving Micah. Her job as a paralegal covered the essentials. Barely. So she took on freelance proofreading gigs late at night, balancing the laptop on her knees while Micah slept beside her. Callen, her husband, knew all of this. He had held her as she cried. He had told her, "We're in this together." He had looked her in the eye and said, "Micah will be okay. We'll make sure of it." And for a while, she believed him. But lately, Callen had changed. He came home later. He spent longer in the shower. He had a new phone case she hadn't seen before, and apps she didn't recognize. He smiled less at Micah. And sometimes when Delilah mentioned the upcoming hospital bill, he just nodded and changed the subject. Tonight he was across the room, laughing with Betrayal's boyfriend, Jared. His drink was already half gone, and his expensive blazer, one she was sure they couldn't afford, caught the light each time he moved. He hadn't come over once to check on Micah. Delilah watched him from afar, her hands tightening around her son's. Something about the way Callen moved, the way he leaned into Jared's conversation, made her stomach twist. There was a lightness to him she hadn't seen in months, like a man who had nothing weighing him down. "Delilah!" She turned. Betrayal, glowing in an emerald jumpsuit, made her way through the crowd with practiced poise. Her hair was perfect, her smile rehearsed. Betrayal had always been magnetic, the kind of woman who filled every room she walked into. "I'm so glad you came," she said, leaning in for a hug. Then, crouching to Micah's level, "And look at this little gentleman. You look so handsome, sweetheart." Micah gave a tired smile. "We wouldn't miss it," Delilah replied softly. Betrayal stood again. "Make sure you get a drink. There's an open bar, and the food is divine." She gestured toward the back, where servers in black ties floated between tables. Delilah nodded. "I will, thanks." She didn't want a drink. She wanted to be home, wrapping Micah in a blanket and watching cartoons. She wanted to stop worrying about how she would cover the $200,000 surgery he needed. She wanted her husband to come stand next to her, to act like they were still a team. She wanted to believe they still were. But as she looked around the glittering room filled with people who had no idea what it felt like to stare at a bill that could decide your child's life, she felt more alone than ever. And across the room, Callen clinked glasses with Jared and laughed louder than he had in months. The following morning, Delilah woke before the alarm. The sun hadn't risen yet, but her mind was already racing. Micah was still asleep, curled into a small bundle on the couch beneath his dinosaur blanket. She didn't have the heart to wake him. He looked peaceful. Too peaceful for a child who had 3 appointments lined up that week. She tiptoed into the kitchen, poured herself a cup of lukewarm coffee, and opened the banking app on her phone out of habit. Just a quick check, a ritual born from fear. But this time something was different. The savings account she had named Micah's surgery no longer had its balance. Her thumb froze. She blinked, refreshed the app. Again. The number didn't change. 3,417. That was impossible. It had been over $180,000 just days ago. Every cent earned, borrowed, begged, or saved for one single purpose: to save Micah. She scrolled down through the transactions, her breath shallow, fingers trembling. There it was. A transfer. $198,500, labeled Private Investment, to an account she didn't recognize. Her stomach dropped like a stone. She sat down hard on the nearest chair, staring at the screen. She thought back. Callen had been acting strange. Yes. But this? Delilah had always handled the budgeting. Callen had his own income, a separate checking account. But he had access to the shared savings account in case of emergencies. That was the word they'd agreed on. Emergencies. Micah's surgery was the emergency. This was a betrayal. She didn't call him right away. She didn't scream. She just sat there for almost an hour, unable to move, her thoughts chasing themselves in circles. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe he had a plan she didn't know about. Maybe. But the moment he walked through the front door that afternoon, something in his face confirmed everything. Callen avoided her eyes. He went straight to the fridge, opened a beer, and started flipping through his phone, as if nothing had changed. "Callen," she said. He didn't look up. "Callen?" she repeated more firmly. "What?" he answered, still scrolling. "Where's the money?" He paused. "What money?" "The money from Micah's account. $200,000. Gone." Callen finally looked up, and for a moment, something flickered in his expression. Guilt? Annoyance? Fear? She couldn't tell. "I moved it," he said flatly. "We'll talk about it later." "No, we'll talk about it now." He sighed, placed the beer down, and walked to the other side of the room, putting space between them. "I needed to protect our assets," he said. "There's a lot going on. The market's volatile. I moved it to keep it safe." Delilah blinked. "You're telling me you moved $200,000 without telling me, from our sick son's surgery fund because you wanted to... What? Invest it?" He shrugged. "It'll grow faster. And maybe we won't need that surgery after all. You've heard the doctors. They're not even sure he's a candidate." Delilah felt like the air had been punched out of her lungs. "You said we were doing everything we could. You said..." "I said we'd figure it out," he cut in. "And I'm figuring it out." She stared at him, heart pounding. There was a coldness in his voice she hadn't heard before, a dismissiveness that made her skin crawl. "You didn't even talk to me," she whispered. Callen didn't respond, and in that silence she realized something far worse than losing the money. She was losing him, not just as a partner, not just as a husband, but as a father, as someone she once thought would protect their child no matter the cost. That night, long after Micah had gone to sleep, Delilah lay awake staring at the ceiling, clutching her phone like a lifeline. She replayed the conversation over and over in her head. And for the first time since this nightmare began, a new thought entered her mind. What if Callen didn't just move the money? What if he never planned to help Micah at all? The days that followed were a blur of silence, rehearsed small talk, and carefully calculated avoidance. Callen didn't bring up the money again, and Delilah didn't press yet. She watched, she listened, and in doing so, she began to notice things she had missed before. There was the sudden appearance of new cologne, something bold and unfamiliar. The faint scent would cling to his jacket when he came home late, too late for any legitimate meeting. There were the charges on his personal credit card, a dinner at a rooftop bar she had never been to, a jewelry store she had only walked past, and a boutique hotel 30 minutes outside the city. Then there were the calls. Delilah never eavesdropped, until now. One night, as she passed by the study on her way to fold laundry, she heard Callen speaking in a low voice. The tone was casual, almost flirtatious. "No, not yet. Yeah, I'm working on it. She's not suspicious." A pause. "She's too focused on the kid." Delilah froze, the pile of clothes slipping from her arms. "She won't be a problem," he said, and then laughed. "Once it's done, we're out. I'm not dragging that weight with me." That weight. He was talking about her, about Micah. She backed away from the door slowly, her heart pounding in her ears. She didn't want to hear more. Not yet. Not without proof. The pieces fell into place fast after that. Callen had changed his phone's passcode. He guarded his laptop like a vault. And when he wasn't working or out, he was glued to the screen, typing messages with the intensity of a man managing something fragile, something secret. Delilah didn't confront him. Not yet. She knew that anger would only make him hide things deeper. She needed something he couldn't deny. One night, while folding a blanket in the living room, she remembered a conversation with her friend Sierra, a tech consultant who had once joked about turning her cheating ex's smartwatch into a spy device. Delilah had laughed back then. But now... She called Sierra the next morning. "I need to record something," she said. "I don't know when it'll happen or what exactly I'll catch, but I need to hear the truth. I need him to hear himself." Sierra didn't ask questions. "You want subtle?" she said. "I've got a keychain recorder with voice activation. He'll never know." Delilah picked it up that afternoon and tested it in her car. The audio was crisp, clear. Every whisper captured like it was spoken into a microphone. The plan was simple. She'd slip it into his work bag. Callen never checked that pocket. She felt sick doing it, but sicker at the thought of doing nothing. The next day, while Callen was in the shower, she slipped the keychain in place, zipped the bag shut, and prayed. Hours passed. Then a day, then 2. On the third night, he left for what he called a business dinner with Jared. Delilah nodded, smiled, and wished him a good night. He returned just before midnight, smelling like that cologne again. The bag went to its usual spot in the hallway. Delilah waited until he was asleep. Then, slowly, carefully, she retrieved the recorder and plugged it into her laptop. It started with background noise. Doors opening, footsteps, traffic. Then voices. Callen. And someone else. A woman. "So, when are you telling her?" the woman asked. Callen laughed. "I'm not until the papers are filed." "What about the kid?" Silence, then. "He's not going to make it anyway. What's the point of pouring money into that?" Delilah's hands went cold. "I've done my time," he continued. "I want out. I'm not living the next 10 years as a nurse. I need to breathe." The woman said something back, but Delilah didn't hear it. The ringing in her ears was deafening. She paused the recording. Her hands were shaking. It wasn't just betrayal. It was abandonment. Callen hadn't just stolen the money. He had already decided to leave, to let go. Of her, of Micah, of everything they had built. She stared at the screen, frozen. But then something clicked. He thought she didn't know. He thought he'd walk away clean. Delilah closed the laptop slowly. For the first time in weeks, her heart wasn't just broken. It was burning. She was done crying. Now she was planning. Delilah didn't sleep that night. She sat in the dark with the recording on loop, each sentence from Callen slicing deeper than the last. Not because she was shocked anymore, but because hearing it aloud made it real. Micah lay asleep just a few feet away, his breathing soft and uneven. She reached over, placed her hand gently on his chest, and felt the faint rhythm under her palm. No one would abandon him, not while she was still breathing. By morning, her plan had taken shape. She wasn't going to confront Callen in the kitchen. She wasn't going to cry in the hallway or scream at him in the driveway. That's what he expected. That's what cowards like him were used to. Messy drama they could twist into a story where they were the victim. No. Delilah wanted him to hear his own words, in front of people who mattered. The perfect opportunity was coming. Brielle's birthday party, less than a week away. It would be public, emotional, full of familiar faces. Callen wouldn't be able to lie his way out of this in front of family, friends, and the people who still believed he was a devoted husband and father. Delilah made arrangements. She asked Sierra to clean up the audio. Sierra didn't ask questions, just sent back a file titled truth.wav. She booked a portable Bluetooth speaker, one small enough to fit in her clutch, loud enough to fill a room. She practiced the moment in her head over and over. Callen giving some showy toast, the guests laughing, clapping, wine glasses in hand. And then, her voice cutting through the noise, the recording playing for all to hear. She didn't feel proud of what she was about to do. She didn't want revenge. She wanted clarity. And she wanted everyone to see him for what he really was. The night before the party, Delilah laid out her outfit. A simple black dress, understated jewelry, hair pulled back. She wanted nothing to distract from the message. Callen, oblivious, kissed her on the cheek and said, "You look great, babe. Brielle will love seeing you all dolled up." She smiled faintly. "Looking forward to it." He didn't notice the tightness in her voice. He never noticed anything unless it threatened his image. On the drive to the venue, Callen played music like nothing was wrong. He made small talk about who might be there, which clients he might bump into, what speeches people would give. Delilah nodded, smiled when needed. Her fingers tapped silently against her phone inside her purse, where the speaker sat beside it, fully charged. The venue was a luxury rooftop lounge with fairy lights draped across beams, a panoramic city view, and champagne towers stacked like glass sculptures. Guests wore silk, velvet, designer everything. Delilah held Micah's hand as they entered. He was tired, but excited to see his aunt. He loved Brielle, who always treated him like the smartest boy in the world. "Hey, my favorite nephew," Brielle called as she greeted them at the entrance. Delilah smiled, hugged her sister. Callen drifted off quickly, swallowed up by a group of former co-workers and a few of Brielle's well-connected friends. Delilah watched him. How easily he laughed, how polished he looked. She wondered if any of them had heard what he'd said in that recording. If they had, they wouldn't be shaking his hand right now. Hours passed. Speeches were made. Toasts were raised. Delilah waited. She watched the people in the room, the ones who adored Callen, the ones who still thought he was good. She waited until Callen made his way to the small platform near the DJ booth, holding a glass in one hand and smiling like a man with no sins. He tapped the microphone once, letting the chatter die down. "I just want to say a few words about the amazing woman we're here to celebrate," he began, voice smooth, confident. Delilah reached into her purse and felt the speaker. She knew what was coming next. Callen would perform. And when he finished, so would she. Callen stood on the small platform. A practiced smile spread across his face as the crowd quieted. He raised his glass and turned to Betrayal. "To my incredible sister-in-law," he began, "whose strength, talent, and radiant energy light up every room she walks into. You deserve the world, Betrayal, and more." Polite applause rippled through the room. Delilah remained still, her hand in her purse, fingers brushing the cold metal casing of the speaker. Callen continued, "You've been a beacon not just to your friends and fans, but to your family, and I'm honored to call you my sister." He glanced at Delilah then, briefly, expecting a smile, a nod, some kind of supportive reaction. She gave him nothing. He moved on. "So here's to you, and to the amazing future you have ahead." More applause. Glasses clinked. The DJ moved to cue the music again. Delilah stepped forward. "Wait," she said calmly, loud enough to carry. Heads turned. Conversations paused. Callen froze. Delilah climbed onto the platform slowly, heels quiet on the polished wood. She turned to the guests. Familiar faces, extended family, Betrayal's friends from work, their neighbors. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said evenly, "but I have something I'd like to share as well. Just a short clip. A gift, you could say." Callen's eyes widened slightly. His smile twitched. "Delilah," he said under his breath, "what are you doing?" She didn't answer. She pulled the speaker from her bag, held it to the microphone, and pressed play. It began with silence. Then, his voice. "So, when are you telling her?" A woman's voice responded faintly. "She doesn't know?" Callen. "No, not yet. She's too focused on the kid. She won't be a problem." Murmurs rippled across the crowd. Then came the part that made the air itself turn cold. "He's not going to make it anyway. What's the point of pouring money into that? I've done my time. I want out. I'm not living the next 10 years as a nurse. I need to breathe." The room was dead silent. Delilah let it play. Every last word. When it ended, she stepped forward, microphone in hand. "I found that in his work bag," she said, voice clear but trembling with control. "I wasn't looking for secrets. I was just trying to figure out why $200,000 disappeared from the fund we set aside for our son's heart surgery." Gasps. Audible now. Faces turned toward Callen. "Micah's 5, she continued. "He's sick, very sick. And I've been working 2 jobs, skipping meals, selling everything that isn't nailed down, just to keep him alive. Meanwhile, this man, my husband, was planning to leave us." She turned to Callen. "Did you think no one would find out? That you could smile through it, deliver a toast, and walk away looking like a decent human being?" Callen's jaw was tight, his fists clenched at his sides. "Delilah, we can talk about this." "No," she said sharply. "You had your turn. You said your piece, clearly." She turned back to the room. "I'm sorry if this ruined anyone's night," she said, "but I won't sit through another lie dressed up as celebration." Betrayal stepped forward from the crowd, stunned. Her mouth parted, words not forming. Then slowly, she walked up to Delilah and wrapped her arms around her. "I didn't know," Betrayal whispered. "I'm so sorry." Callen tried to speak again, but no one was listening. Guests were whispering, avoiding his gaze. A few turned and began to quietly leave. The party was over. Not with music, not with a toast, but with the sound of a man's mask cracking open in front of everyone who once believed in him. Delilah stepped off the platform, head held high. She didn't look back. She had said what needed to be said, and now she was free. Delilah didn't speak to Callen on the drive home. Not a word. Micah had fallen asleep in the back seat, completely unaware of the explosion that had just taken place. Delilah kept her eyes on the road, hands clenched tightly on the wheel. The silence between her and Callen wasn't awkward. It was final. He didn't try to defend himself. He didn't ask her why she did it. He just sat there, arms crossed, jaw locked. The man who once couldn't go an hour without talking to her was now a ghost riding beside her. When they got home, she carried Micah to his bed, tucked him in, and kissed his forehead gently. Only after she closed his door did she turn to face her husband. "You want to say anything?" she asked, standing in the hallway. Callen shrugged, leaning against the kitchen counter. "You made your point." "No," she said, arms folded. "That was your point. I just let everyone hear it." His eyes narrowed. "You humiliated me." "You humiliated yourself," she replied coldly. "You took money from your own son's medical fund to chase your freedom. You lied to me. You planned to disappear." "I didn't sign up for this," he muttered. Delilah stepped forward. "For what? For being a father? For being a decent human being?" Callen didn't answer. Delilah's voice dropped lower. "You looked me in the eye and said we'd fight for Micah. You told him you'd never leave, but you were already halfway out the door." He laughed once, bitter. "It's not like you made it easy to stay. You've been consumed by him." "He's our son!" The silence that followed was louder than any shout. She turned away. "I'm filing tomorrow," she said flatly. "What?" he scoffed. "You're just going to throw everything away over this?" "You already did," she replied. "I'm just making it official." He stared at her, as if hoping she'd flinch. She didn't. The next morning she made the call. A divorce attorney recommended by Sierra picked up after 2 rings. Delilah outlined the situation calmly. Misappropriated funds, infidelity, emotional abandonment, and a child in critical medical need. "You have a strong case," the attorney said, "especially with that recording." Later that day, she sat across the table from Lorraine, her father-in-law, who had asked to speak with her alone. Callen wasn't invited. "I heard the recording," Lorraine said quietly. "It made me sick." Delilah didn't respond. "I never imagined he was capable of that. I raised him to be better than this." She looked up. "Did you?" The words hung heavy between them. Lorraine swallowed hard. "I know this isn't my place, but I want you to know I'm on your side and Micah's. If you need anything, I'll help." Delilah nodded once. "Thank you, but we'll manage." She meant it. In the days that followed, Callen moved out. He didn't fight for custody, didn't fight for the house. He made one attempt to reclaim some of the savings, but her lawyer shut it down swiftly. Brielle visited often. She brought groceries, cooked dinner, and even sold off a brand deal she had lined up to help pay for Micah's next round of treatment. She cried when she told Delilah, said she wished she'd seen through Callen sooner. Delilah hugged her. "You saw what he wanted you to see. We all did." Each day got lighter. Not easier, but lighter. She reclaimed the silence in her home, the peace in her own skin. No more walking on eggshells. No more pretending everything was okay. And when she watched Micah sleep now, it was with certainty. He would get every chance to live, and she would fight for every second of it. She didn't need Callen. She never had. Spring arrived late that year, but when it came gently. Soft breezes through open windows, sunlight pooling on the living room floor, and the distant sound of children playing outside. Delilah stood in the kitchen, pouring apple juice into a small cup, the way Micah liked it, with no ice. His backpack sat by the door, already packed for school, and his favorite red hoodie hung from the chair, slightly wrinkled from yesterday's excitement. He had gone back to school just a few weeks ago. Post-surgery, post-recovery, post-nightmare. The operation had been successful. The fundraising, the savings, and the support Brielle had gathered in Delilah's name. It all added up. And Micah had made it through. He still had checkups, still got tired more quickly than other kids, but his smile was brighter, his appetite stronger. The doctors said he was healing. So was she. The divorce had finalized quickly. Callen didn't drag it out, maybe because he knew he had no chance, or maybe because there was nothing left to fight for. His name hadn't come up in weeks. He didn't call, didn't visit, didn't ask, and Delilah no longer waited. She had moved into a smaller apartment closer to Micah's school. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm. Hers. There was no tension clinging to the walls, no bitterness lurking behind closed doors. Just quiet. Peace. Her job at the law office had offered her more hours, and Sierra had helped her land 2 new freelance clients. Financially, it wasn't easy, but it was possible. And possible was enough. Brielle stopped by every weekend, bringing pastries and flowers, always hugging Micah a little longer than usual. She never brought up Callen. She didn't need to. One morning, as Delilah was walking Micah to class, he tugged on her hand and looked up. "Mom," he said, "are we going to be okay now?" She looked down at him, his big eyes, his brave little heart, and smiled. "We already are, baby." He nodded once, satisfied, and ran ahead to join his classmates. Delilah watched him disappear through the school doors. For the first time in years, her heart didn't twist when she let him go. It swelled. She walked back slowly, letting the sunlight hit her face. She didn't feel broken anymore. She didn't feel betrayed. She didn't feel angry. She felt ready. To live, to hope, to trust herself again. Because what Callen never understood was this: she wasn't surviving for Micah. She was living because of him. And as long as he smiled, Delilah would never lose again.